Coming up on the Nick Craig Show, the left suddenly cares about affordability. This is after years of running from the problem. I'll have the details coming up. And a good Thursday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you on demand on your own time. If this live time slot doesn't work for you, you can check it out in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning, as always, is brought to you by Melissa Gott and the amazing team over at the Law Group here in Wilmington. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. All right, we're going to get into this affordability thing, some announcements over the last couple of weeks from President Donald Trump. We'll get into that here in just a couple of minutes. But first, we've got to start off with a situation that continues to spiral out of control in Minnesota. Over the night, in the evening hours last night, Wednesday, there continues to be unrest on the streets in Minneapolis. And this story's been played through. I'm not going to spend an entire another show talking about it, but here's the gist of the story. An illegal Venezuelan migrant, somebody who was in the United States illegally, was shot in the leg by a federal immigration agent in Minneapolis yesterday after he fled during a traffic stop and beat an officer with a shovel. That's the situation that is unfolding right now in the streets of Minnesota. You have got Mayor Fry, the abject jackass moron that he is. You've got Tim Walz, the scam fraud mayor of Minnesota, the state. They're just out of control. Last night, as I was wrapping up some work, I saw that Walz held some stupid press conference. Donald Trump wants this. He's begging for us to get out of control. You guys are egging this stuff on. You guys are allowing this stuff to unfold the way in which it is. I mean, so if you want this stuff to stop, work with federal immigration, work with ICE, work with DHS. Instead, what are they doing? They're suing the administration over enforcement operations. They are suing the federal government over people being illegally in the United States of America. I mean, it doesn't get any stupider than that. This, unfortunately, seems like it's a tinderbox right now. I don't know how things are going to continue to play out. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm not going to I could spend every show on it. I don't think that's compelling, interesting content. You know what's going on here. The left wants this violence. We've seen it, unfortunately, unfold pretty dramatically over the last 2 years. An assassination attempt on the president's life. Charlie Kirk murdered, shot in the neck in broad daylight by another out-of-control leftist. This is what they want. They can't win on the issues. They can't win on the policies and things that actually impact Americans' lives, so they've turned to violence. There's no other option left for them. They can't win anything else, so it's just go negative, we'll get violent. We'll rile up our people. The story on this is just insane. I mean, look at this headline over at the New York Post. If you remember the website Babylon Bee, I know it still exists, but like headlines like this used to seem like they would be parody. This is the headline over at the New York Post for those listening. Illegal Venezuelan migrant shot in Minneapolis after mercilessly abusing a federal agent with a snow shovel. I mean, this is like a fake parody headline. Somebody who is illegally in the United States of America, somebody who broke our federal immigration law, doesn't want to deal with the consequences, doesn't want to pay the price. So he decides that after he's stopped in a traffic stop, that his solution is to get a snow shovel out of his car and beat an ICE official with it. I mean, what the hell's going on? We'll keep an eye on this throughout the day. It's just a mess of a situation. I'm looking over at all the major cable news networks right now, and as you can imagine, they've got reporters and individuals on the scene with this situation. It's just it's a mess. It's unfortunately probably only going to get worse before it gets better. I don't know what the federal solution is, but I can tell you pretty clearly this morning, and I can say pretty confidently, the left is out of control. They have completely lost the script. They have no idea how to handle these situations, and they continue to encourage this kind of violence, this out of control nonsense. If we get any other additional details, we'll obviously see throughout the day today how things continue to unfold in Minneapolis and throughout the state of Minnesota. As those details roll in, we'll continue to bring you up to date right here on the Nick Craig Show. Affordability. This has become an interesting meme, and I use that word pretty clearly because that's what it is. Affordability, the term, I think everybody understands what that word means. I don't know that there's a large level of ambiguity as it relates to the word affordability. But it is interesting because now this has become a major talking point for those on the political left. Now, the reason that it's interesting that it's become a talking point is because they ignored the problem of affordability nearly throughout the entire Biden administration. It was a major problem on the minds of the American people. In the summer of 2022, you had inflation at nearly 9.5%, and you had cable news, the Sunday shows, all of the left-wing media that exists throughout the country just ignore the problem, bury their head in the sand, plug their ears, and just pretend that it was not a problem. But it was. I talk about political polling a lot. I'd consider myself kind of a nerd when it comes to political polling. I look at this stuff so many different times throughout the day, always looking at new political polls. And as you go back, and if you want to go back, if you don't necessarily believe what's coming out of my mouth, okay, you can go back and look at political polling leading up to the 2024 election. There were two major issues that were on people's minds. And one we've talked about a lot, illegal immigration. All right, as we watch these situations continue to unfold in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, where you've now got illegal immigrants who are using shovels to ambush and attack federal agents. Immigration was a top issue for voters in 2024. If immigration wasn't the top issue in the poll, the economy was. And depending on the poll you looked at, depending on the outlet, you'd see economy and immigration kind of flip-flopping back and forth. Those were the two main drivers, according to political polling, according to data. Those were the two main drivers for voters in 2024. They had dealt with years of rampant inflation. They had dealt with years of federal officials saying, oh, inflation is just transitory. It's almost not even real. Ignore the problem. It's not really happening. It doesn't exist. I mean, this was the real conversation that was going on during the Biden administration. And to back this up, I saw this post out on X yesterday. This was a post from CNN back in 2023, March 14th of 2023. This was what CNN wrote. U.S. inflation is still high, but it's falling. Last month's consumer price index measured 6%, down from January's 6.4%. The date on that, March 14th, 2023. We now turn to a post from CNN on January the 13th of 2026. So a little less than 3 years later. U.S. inflation remained at 2.7% in December, underscoring persistent costs of living challenges. So it was good when inflation was at 6%. It's falling. This should be a positive thing. But when inflation is at literally more than half of what it was, in some points, if even more than that, triple what it was during the Biden administration, then it underscores, according to CNN, the persistent living challenges and the cost of living in the United States. These individuals at CNN, I know you're shocked, are incredibly dishonest in what they do. And let me state this. Affordability is a major problem. I'm not trying to sit here and pretend that the economy is not a major driving political factor. It absolutely is. And it's got major trickle-down effects. No pun intended. When you've got rough economic conditions, which of course are most prominently laid out at the federal level, the state, it does have an impact, but local, there's very little that can go on with the actual day-to-day operations of the quote-unquote economy. A lot of this is federally driven. some state, but most of it is federally driven. It has an impact on down ballot races. It has an impact on down ballot elections. So it is and should be a major point of contention and concern for this administration. Now, fortunately, unlike what we saw under the Biden regime, this administration is talking about affordability. This administration is attempting to deal with at least parts of the problem. Now, let me state, that doesn't mean that Trump is going to be able to fix the problem. It doesn't mean that Bassett's going to be able to fix the problem. I'm not saying that's the case. But unlike what you saw previously and have seen previously, the issue is not being largely ignored. And that's exactly what you saw under the Biden administration. It's why the economy was such a driving factor for voters in 2024. They were frustrated and annoyed and ticked off with inflation, high prices everywhere from the gas pump to the grocery store. They were fed up. They were annoyed. They were ticked off with what was going on. And they heard nothing about it from the administration. Oh, the Inflation Reduction Act, which added a whole bunch of extra money to the federal deficit and did not reduce inflation for anybody. It built expensive EV charging stations in the Midwest. That was the Green New Deal. All of that fun stuff was in the aptly named Inflation Reduction Act passed under the Biden administration. This president, this administration has a very short runway to get the affordability issue dealt with. And it's a tough one to deal with. While the president can say things and do things, it is very hard for one man or one woman to control the economy. The president, very powerful position, obviously, a lot of responsibility, obviously, but there's no magic wand that fixes the economy. The president can't just wake up on a random Thursday morning and fix and wave his magic wand and fix the economy. That's not how this works. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's a very complicated issue. There's a lot of facets and elements that make the U.S. economy what it is. And while there can be factors that the president can play, while there are things that he can do to weaken some of these economic pressures, to provide some level of relief to the American people, it's like trying to turn around a large ship. It does not happen with the snap of a finger. It is not a quick process. It's very slow, and it's something that takes a lot of time to play out. But it's a major issue. And we'll, of course, get into this throughout the rest of this year as we watch and as we look at the details, the major factors that are going to be driving voters to the polls in 2026. Driving voters to election booths across the state of North Carolina as we get into November of this year. There's no question about it. The economy will be one of those major factors. And it's why you've heard me say in the past, I appreciate that the president is very involved in what's going on internationally. Obviously, now one of the major discussions is the atrocities that are taking place under the supreme leader of Iran's regime. There's a report out I saw today that there's as many as 12,000 people that have been killed in those protests that have been taking place since the beginning of the year. 12,000 people. We just talked about that. Was it Monday? How some of the reports are 2, 3. Now it could be up as many as 12,000 people. And I'm glad that the president is involved in that. I'm glad that he is speaking about these issues and shining a light on this stuff. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But when the rubber meets the road, it's the domestic policy stuff that this administration has to deal with. When voters show up to voting locations later this year, their top issue is not going to be Iran. It's not going to be Israel and Hamas. It's not going to be Russia, Ukraine. It's likely to be the economy. That's what history would show us as it relates to politics. And I will continue to say that this administration needs to be laser focused on prices and on the cost of goods as we continue through 2026. They've just got to be focused on it. There's got to be an absolute race to the finish to work on some of this stuff, because that is what is going to be driving either a Republican victory and continue to hold on to power later this year, or a major Democrat win, which, as you and I are well aware, will be a disaster for the country. The president will essentially be lame duck for 2 years. He'll probably be impeached. He's already said that. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. There is a lot riding on the elections that we are going to see coming up later on this year. So I mentioned this word affordability and how it's become a meme for the left, and laid out again how they didn't really care about this issue. They largely ran away from it and ignored it, and now they want to use it as some major talking point. They want to use it as some major winning political message. And to the Democrats' credit, it is a winning political message. The economy affects everybody. Regardless of where you work, how much money you make, what you do, you're filling up gas in your car, you're putting food on the table. All of that stuff is economic activity. You are interfacing with it almost every single day. You are likely doing or buying something every single day and interfacing with the economy, whether it's shopping on Amazon, going to the grocery store, putting gas in your car. I mean, every single day you are interfacing with the economy. Picking up a cup of coffee at the gas station, you're buying something. The economy, interfacing, happening right in front of you. And so the broader economic conditions, which are improving, thankfully, thanks to this administration, that is a good sign, and that hopefully will lead to some level of prosperity and success for the Republicans as we head deeper into the midterm elections. The other issue, or one of the other major issues that is still economy related, is housing. This is a major, major discussion that is going on right now, especially in a state like North Carolina. Our state is one of the top 3, sometimes top 2, depending on what study and survey you look at, fastest growing states in the United States. I said states there a bunch of times. North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the U.S. We see huge amounts of inbound migration. And I know not everybody likes that. I understand, as I've been told many a times throughout my tenure here in North Carolina, you Yankees are moving in here and making it. I understand. I'm not oblivious to the fact. I know I'm part of the problem. I get it. But North Carolina is growing. We're the number 1 state for business. CNBC has ranked that 3 out of the last 5 years as North Carolina being the number 1 state for business. And with that growth comes some pressures. But I'll state this, and this was told to me years ago. It is always better to be on the side of growth than on the side of decay. And we, again, can see that here in our state. You can look at rural areas in North Carolina that used to be very prominent communities with cotton and textile mills, tobacco, things of that nature, that are ghost towns now. There's nothing left. You drive through some of these one stoplight towns in North Carolina, and it's abject poverty. It is an area where there is no economic growth. There is very little, if any, economic activity. And so then you look at the larger metro areas. Of course, you've got Charlotte and Raleigh. Those are the 2 large cities. Then you've got kind of the next tier down metros, areas like Wilmington and Greensboro and Asheville and even Greenville to some extent. Those areas are on the rise as individuals maybe aren't satisfied and don't want to live in the major cities like Raleigh, Charlotte, or Durham. So they've gone to these kind of next level up cities. But there's a lot of growth and prosperity with that. And I know the construction is not great. I know the road construction is not the most ideal situation. But I, again, will contend to you, it is better to be on the side of growth than on the side of decay. That does not mean that growth doesn't come with its challenges. That does not mean that there are not issues with a growing state and a growing community. There absolutely are. But I would rather deal with those growth issues than be on the flip side, of which we see in a lot of our counties here, 100 counties in North Carolina. Many of them are tier 1 counties, meaning there's very little, if any, economic prosperity and success going on. The issues that they're dealing with are completely different, and ones that are very, very, very hard to dig out of and to try and re-spur investment. And housing is one of those major issues. It's multifaceted. You've got, of course, people moving to an area. They need somewhere to live. Obviously, that's I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. And with the explosion and with the growth in this state, you have seen housing absolutely skyrocket. Since COVID-19, property values across the state of North Carolina have absolutely skyrocketed, which is good if you have a property, I guess. If you think that if your property value is meaningful to you, that's good news. That's a great situation. But the negative, the flip side of that, is that you've got a housing shortage that exists now and general unaffordability as it relates to housing. And that is being seen across most of the state of North Carolina, unless you go to very, very rural areas where there is a flip in kind of the supply and demand curve as it relates to what's available. And before we get into what the president has said over the last couple of weeks, as the president is trying to ban large investors from buying single-family housing, one of the things that can be done immediately, that you don't need the federal government and even some cases state government involved in, is local government. When you've got housing developments being built, whether we're talking about single family homes, condos, or everybody's favorite thing to talk about, apartment complexes, when those things are being built, one of the easiest and quickest ways to bring down the prices on those, to make those so-called more affordable, is to get government out of the way. There is an incredible amount of bureaucracy, an incredible amount of red tape at the local level, from cities and other municipalities to counties, that bog down the development process. Home developers, builders of apartments and condos, they know how to get things done pretty quickly. They are in the business of getting these units online as quickly as possible. It is absolutely in their best financial interest to break ground on a project and have people move in as quick as possible. You've heard the old saying, time is money. Doesn't get any better than that as it relates to housing. Time is money. And so when you have local governments that drag their feet, send projects through committee and review after review after review, that is how you get to time equals money. And those costs from the delay, those costs from these projects taking so long to get off the ground due to government approval and regulation, adds to the final price. What do you think, a developer is going to eat the cost of 2 years of regulatory review? You think a developer or a home builder or an apartment builder is just going to swallow those costs? No, they're not. As we see in almost every other facet of our economy, it gets passed on to the consumer. It's like what we've talked about for over a year now as it relates to tariffs. It's the big issue with those. The costs are being passed on to the U.S. consumer. We're paying for it. That's why I'm not a fan of largely what the administration is doing with tariffs. Somebody is paying for it, whether you're paying for it on the front side or on the back side, but you're paying for it at the end of the day. And so if we want to talk about affordability, and one of the largest things that, largest expenses every month for most people is housing, whether it's a mortgage payment or rent, it is a large cost. And if government would back off, if the red tape would be cut in some extents, those would immediately lower the cost of those units, lower the cost of those houses. So there are some immediate things that can be done in cities and counties across North Carolina to help alleviate some of these affordable housing discussions and concerns. And so we'll get into this announcement from President Trump back on January the 7th. So this was back last week, a little over a week ago now, about these single family houses, because there is something else going on with this. The president wants to ban these large investors from buying homes. We'll get into those details coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Before that, I want to let you know that when legal challenges arise, make sure you put your trust in the Law Group right here in Wilmington. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of our state. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense. If so, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, folks. They're not some big national law firm. They're located in downtown Wilmington. Melissa Gott and her team live in our community, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Great blog over there. You can read about a litany of legal issues. You can read more about all of the attorneys, the areas of practice, all of that, lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call, 910-251-6088, or online, lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We'll grab a quick break. On the other side, we'll continue with this discussion about affordability and something pretty interesting that the president had to say last week about it. Those details after this, as the Nick Craig Show rolls on a Thursday morning, streaming live on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show as we continue the discussion today about affordability. Some interesting commentary from President Donald Trump last week. We'll continue that here. I want to remind you that you can get access to daily show notes and more, including our monthly Nick Craig Show Hangout. We jump on a Zoom call for a couple of hours every month, talk about the news and issues of the day. All of that is available over at patreon.com/Nick Craig for as little as literally a cup of coffee. You can support the show per month over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. The link to that is also available on the website, nickcraig.com. So last Wednesday, President Donald Trump put out a post on Truth Social, and it reads as this: "For a long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. It was the reward for working hard and doing the right thing. But now, because of record high inflation caused by Joe Biden and Democrats in Congress, that American dream is increasingly out of the reach for far too many people, especially younger Americans. And as I mentioned in the previous segment, the president, and I appreciate that the president is talking about this because it is a major issue. You talk to individuals, and we've had this discussion before as well, those in their early to mid 20s, maybe even early 30s, there is this general negativity that exists right now. There is a general thought that you can never get ahead, that regardless of where you go to school, how much a ridiculous amount of college debt you rack up for some stupid degree that makes you unemployable, that's a whole different discussion we don't have time to get into right now. But regardless of what you do, you're just never going to be able to get ahead. Is there some truth to that? Yes, I would say so. Is there also some preconceived notions with that are inaccurate? Yes, that is also the case. However, there is a large group of that population, those younger individuals, that have that feeling. It is a very real thing. One of the nicknames for individuals right now is doomers. It's because they are constantly doomed. They feel like there's just nowhere to go. There's no forward or upward mobility or progression. They're doomed no matter what they do. If they work hard, they work a little, they're in the exact same situation. The president continued with his post on Truth Social saying, "It is for that reason and much more that I'm immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes, and I will be calling on Congress to codify it. People live in homes, not corporations." Now, this is an interesting tack from the president. If you're somebody that has looked at this issue for some time, you are well aware of the issue that we're talking about. You have got large investment groups, large hedge funds and others that have been gobbling up single-family houses all over the United States for quite some time. Now, let me state this. I would consider myself a free market person, in this case, a free market conservative. And I strongly believe that. Most of, not all of my political opinions and ways in which I discuss and work through issues all rolls back to free market capitalism. That's why I was just mentioning, getting government out of the way in terms of building properties, whether we're talking about single family condos, apartments, whatever. Getting government out of the way is a phenomenal, pretty quick solution, right? Let the free market do what they can do, which is build. Builders know how to build. I know that's not necessarily a controversial take, but they know how to build properties. They know how to do this stuff. The government does not. Private business does. Private individuals do. So this one is kind of interesting for me because if the free market, which, these hedge funds, these very large investment groups, these institutional investors, as the president calls them, these individuals are operating in the free market. They are going into areas, they are able to outbid other individuals, outbid families and people looking to buy property and purchase those. So from a free market perspective, I don't know necessarily, my immediate gut reaction is I don't want the government to get involved. And that's normally the tack that I take. However, this one seems to be a little bit different because it's creating major amounts of problems. It has absolutely surged the price of housing. You can go and look at these issues and right in the immediate aftermath of the president's post to kind of back this up, a group called Innovation Homes, which is, by the way, very prominent here in North Carolina, which is the largest renter of single-family homes in the country, predominantly in the Sun Belt or southeastern half of the country, tumbled 6% after the president's post. So obviously, the investors that were in or have financial stake in Innovation Homes understood what the president was trying to say. They understood that there was some concern there from the president. Shares of Blackstone, I should say, an investing firm that owns and rents single-family homes dropped more than 5%. And another private equity firm, Apollo Global Management, also declined over 5% last week in the immediate aftermath of the post there from President Trump. The national median existing single-family house price was $426,800 in the third quarter of 2025 after hitting a record high of $435,300 in the summer. That's according to the National Association of Realtors. The average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage is currently still above 6%, 6.19, according to Mortgage News Daily. And that, of course, it only exacerbates and adds to the expense and the cost of housing. Blackstone was the largest private equity owner of apartments in the United States with more than 230,000 units, according to data from Private Equity Stakeholder Projects, which was released last year. Blackstone in recent years has spent billions of dollars acquiring real estate companies such as Tricon Residential, American Campus Communities, and AIR Communities. Now, the president did not immediately provide details on how such a ban would be implemented, and the president said that he would outline additional housing and affordability proposals during a speech at the World Economic Forum. That's the WEF. You talk about globalism. You talk about the individuals that are really running the show. A lot of that stuff's going on at WEF in Davos. That's coming up next week. We'll be digging into those details from the Davos conference. And so that's what the president has laid out. And it puts me as a free market capitalist, a free market conservative, in kind of an interesting political bind, which I'm going to discuss with you right now, because it's interesting to work through this stuff and walk through this stuff and kind of lay it all out. If Blackstone, Innovation Homes, Apollo Global, if they have the cash on hand to go into a market and purchase housing, should the government get involved in that? Again, my gut immediate reaction to that is no, they shouldn't. But it has caused a major problem for the U.S. economy. And is this a situation where some sort of government regulation makes sense? I know that that's kind of an interesting thing to say, because I would be, and I'm sure many of you are, cut from a similar cloth where almost every piece of government regulation we see is burdensome and ridiculous. It makes your life more complicated. It makes your business, the place you work, or if you own a business, it makes that more complicated. It only adds complications to your life. And complications many times can be very quickly paralleled or drawn to some sort of economic impact. Makes things more complicated, more burdensome, therefore it costs more to do, therefore somebody's got to pay for it. And as you and I are well aware, the somebody every single time is you and I. The somebody is us. It always has been. It always will be. So traditionally and typically, getting government out of the conversation is the way to go. Removing red tape, cutting burdensome regulation is something that we all should strive for. Fortunately, here in North Carolina, we have seen the General Assembly, the Republican-led General Assembly, I'll note, do a lot of this. As I was just mentioning, CNBC has ranked the state of North Carolina the number one state for business 3 out of the last 5 years. What makes a state the number one for business? And CNBC's got all their factors. The report's old now. I'm not going to get into all the details, but one of the biggest is a friendly corporate environment. A government, in this case, the state, that allows business to operate, that has a tax structure, which North Carolina does, that is friendly towards business. There is a reason that almost every couple of weeks we are seeing some significant business announcement here in North Carolina, some larger than others, albeit, but there's almost always some sort of major announcement. I get the emails from the Governor Stein press office, and it seems like if not once a week, once every 2 weeks, there's an announcement. Some new company's building a manufacturing facility, hiring 6,000 people. It's a pretty consistent thing. But I'll contend to you that stuff doesn't happen by accident. And that's really the gist of this. You don't just magically become the number one state for business. It takes very strategic, very clear decision making from government leaders, in this case, the General Assembly, to cultivate a climate that is friendly to business. When there's more business activity, there's more jobs, more people want to be here. You see how this circle goes around. And again, as I've already stated, it is better to be on the side of growth than on the side of decay. So back to the post from President Donald Trump about housing affordability, about the American dream, about the ability to purchase a home. The other element in part of this, and this has been said for decades now, this is not anything new. This is not a new idea I'm bringing to you right now. The quickest way to accumulate generational wealth, to leave your children better off than you were, and this has been said for decades now. The best and quote unquote easiest way to do that with the most level of success and prosperity is property, is home ownership, is property ownership. You talk about setting up the next generation for success. That is one of the quickest, and I don't say easiest as it's easy to go out and buy a home. It's not, but it is one of the most surefire ways to do that. And there's another part of this as well. And we've got some comments coming in on the show. Is the buying of all these homes all part of a takeover of the United States control? That's another element of this as well. You get into we always kind of joke about this society where you don't own anything, you don't actually have any possessions, very much akin to socialism or communism, where you just have no ability to own anything and everything is given to you by the government. You can see a situation. You can begin to draw some parallels where that becomes a very real thing when you have large investment firms, large institutional investors that are purchasing, in some cases, entire single-family neighborhoods. This is a very real thing. And if you look for this online, you'll see that there are many articles written by alleged prominent outlets that will claim that this is a myth, that there's no evidence this is going on. I'll point to the stock market of these major companies in the immediate aftermath of the president's announcement. If this wasn't going on, why would Innovation Homes, Blackstone, and Apollo Global Management drop anywhere between 5 and 6% on this news? It obviously would be affecting their business. You typically don't see a stock move up or down by that percentage after an announcement if there's no vested interest there. And so I caught this interesting article on Substack, and it's from December of 2024. And it actually has a North Carolina example in the story. And it's going through this discussion. It's going through this problem of major corporations purchasing, buying, and owning these pieces of property. And it reads like this. And the individual in this article is named as Jay. Jay's story. Jay, a 24-year-old mechanic in Charlotte, North Carolina, thought he'd found the perfect starter home, a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet suburb. He offered $275,000, his absolute max. However, the seller said another buyer offered $300,000 in cash. That buyer was Innovation Homes. Now, Jay rents an apartment for $1,900 a month, ironically paying more than what his mortgage would have cost. Jay told the Substack author, "It's heartbreaking. I wanted a backyard for my dogs, a place to build a family. Instead, I'm handing over my paycheck to some faceless corporation." And it goes on to say that this continues. And it reads, Innovation Homes, for example, doesn't just buy properties, it turns them into rentals and often raises the rent year after year. A 2022 study, so going back a couple of years, but a 2022 study found that corporate landlords like Innovation Homes charge anywhere between 15 to 22% higher rents than mom and pop landlords, meaning you just rent from an individual that owns a house, you're their tenant. And of course those rents are going to be higher because you have to fund this major corporation that is publicly traded on the stock market. So of course it's going to be 15 to 22% higher. There are stories back years ago of these major investment firms literally buying entire single-family neighborhoods in Texas, where you, like similar to North Carolina, there's explosive growth. Similar to what we see here, there's a lot of people that are moving to Texas, a lot of businesses that are moving there as well. And so developers have been trying to pop up neighborhoods as quickly as possible. And these major investment firms have come in and paid cash for every single home. And again, they're not living in those homes, of course. But what they are buying it for, this data is a little old in terms of the numbers, but buying it for $300,000 cash and then renting it for $2,200, $2,500 a month. So you've got an entire neighborhood now. The developer doesn't care. They're getting paid. You've got an entire developer now, builds a neighborhood. Some investment firm comes in, buys up all of the 25 homes that were built. And now those homes are no longer available for purchase. They're able to rent, but they're no longer available to purchase. And so that is a problem. That is only adding to this level of explosive cost as it relates to housing. Many of you have seen this, depending on where you live in North Carolina, you have seen this with your yearly property taxes. Many counties and many municipalities just recently went through property reevaluations, and some people's properties have jumped 60, 70, 80% in value over the span of just a couple of years. Explosive growth. A comment coming in, instead of regulating, incentivizing the sellers to sell to an actual person. That could be the case. But again, and I have some hesitation with this because I'm not a fan of the government incentivizing business. I'm just not. I don't like government incentives. I don't like handouts. I don't like when the government waves around things and picks winners or losers, right? We've talked about this when we talk about electricity and solar panels and wind. It's incentivized. Electric vehicles over the last couple of years, incentivized by the federal government. I don't like incentives, but something has got to give here because this is not sustainable long term. All of housing is out of control in terms of cost and price right now. You've got a younger generation that feels like they cannot get ahead, and in some cases they're right. You look at a house that was worth $150,000 4 or 5 years ago, now selling for $350,000 plus. You're talking about a mortgage payment that's going from $1,100 or $1,200 a month to one that's $2,500 a month. I mean, it's a completely different ballgame, completely different ballpark. And so we'll keep an eye on what the president has to say. He will be at the World Economic Forum in Davos next week, and apparently is going to be speaking more about this. And it's going to be very interesting to watch. And again, it puts me as a free market person, an anti-government person, an anti-regulation person, an anti-government tells you what to do person into kind of a little bit of a predicament. I'm fine to admit that. I'm not going to shy away and pretend to hide from it. It is an interesting predicament because I can see both sides of the issue here. I've got friends, my peers, people my age that are dealing with this struggle right now where they have gone out and they have worked hard and they have made smart decisions, smart financial decisions. They didn't get and riddle themselves with student loan debt. They didn't go out and make stupid decisions. They're not driving around a $65,000 a year car, right? They've made smart decisions and they're still struggling. They're still in this kind of weird purgatory where they are doing well, but just not well enough to get into a home outside of course, renting it from Apollo Global Management, Blackstone, or Innovation, which is just pissing the money away, right? You're not building any equity. You're not generating anything. You're, as Jay, the mechanic from Charlotte, noted in this Substack, you're just giving your paycheck to a faceless, nameless corporation that has the financial means to walk around and offer cash, which, by the way, as a seller, you're going to take every single time. I mean, if somebody's offering cash, you'd be stupid not to take it as a seller. Way less paperwork. The money. It's just the whole process is a whole hell of a lot simpler than going through the process of a mortgage as a seller. Process makes a whole hell of a lot more sense. So I'm curious what the president is going to say or do at the World Economic Forum. And again, I'll stress, these issues, the economy is a very vast thing. The word economy, there's a whole hell of a lot of stuff that's under that. Housing and affordability is a major part of that. This is going to be something that the president, I'm not saying he's going to be able to fix everything, but he is going to have to prove to the American people that he and the Republicans are working on the issue, are dealing with the issue, and are going to have some level of solution to it before the midterm elections. If not, if economic uncertainty remains high, if people do not feel comfortable in the current economic climate, I can promise you right now, the Republican Party, and it's not even necessarily their fault, but the Republican Party will get creamed in the midterm elections. It will be a brutal election night defeat. That's what people care about. That's what they interface with each and every day. So we'll keep an eye on the president's comments, bring you the latest as soon as we get it right here on the Nick Craig Show. A little bit off track with everything this morning. I've had this in my stack of news for the last couple of days and just wanted to get it over with and talk about it because it is an important issue and it is an important discussion. We'll keep an eye on the details. That's going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Nick Craig Show. You can listen to the show anytime on demand by visiting the website nickcraig.com or checking out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. Thanks to the Law Group for their continued support of the program, lawgroupnc.com. We're back here tomorrow morning live, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and 24/7, wherever you got your podcasts, right here on The Nick Craig Show.